Welcome to The Skinny for Friday, October 3rd. I'm Mitch Perry, the senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, joined by my colleague Ray Roa, the editor-in-chief with Creative Loafing newspaper. Hey, Ray, good morning.
Good morning, Mitch. How's it going?
Ray,
You're feeling good, I know.
I'm ecstatic right now. If I can talk a little personal, my San Francisco 49ers defeated the LA Rams last night in overtime in a thrilling game when they were huge underdogs with a wounded MASH unit type of team offense especially. And so anyway, by the way, the Niners are coming to Tampa a week from Sunday.
Are you going to the game?
I'm going to go to that game, and I'm going to be so excited about it.
You wearing a Niners jersey?
I will be wearing my Christian McCaffrey shirt, actually.
Right.
I do have a t-shirt. Okay, enough of that. But hey, folks, happy Friday to you all. So later in the show, we're going to talk to Dave Ehrenberg. Some of your Morning Joe MSNBC viewers may know Dave. He's been on there the last couple of years talking about legal issues. He's, of course, a former state legislator and former Palm Beach County state attorney. And so he's going to be on with us to talk about various legal issues as well as political issues going on in Florida and the country. But first, we're going to talk about the big story out of Washington, D.C., which, of course, is the federal government shutdown now in its third day. And joining us to discuss this is Matt Glassman. He's a senior fellow at the Government Affairs Institute at Georgetown University. And prior to that, he spent 10 years on Capitol Hill at the Congressional Research Service. Matt Glassman, good morning. Welcome to The Skinny.
Hey, happy to be here.
Thanks so much, Matt, for joining us. So I wanted to get you on because I read a piece that you did, or kind of a Q&A you did in the New York Times about 10 days or so ago, I think, roughly, as we were approaching, of course, this government shutdown. And what you talked about basically in that piece was that you thought the Democrats, it wouldn't be a great thing if the Democrats went ahead with this government shutdown. And, before we can talk about where we're at now and where polls and public opinion polls have come out now in the last few days. So most of them showing people are blaming the Republicans more than the Democrats. But that wasn't the case of people looking into this thing last week. I know the New York Times Siena poll published last Saturday said Democrats would definitely take it on the chin, with 2/3 of voters saying that the Democrats would get blamed for this. Again, like I say, that may be different now. But anyway, let's go back to the thoughts about this going into the shutdown. Tell our listeners why you thought that this would not be a great thing for the Democrats.
Reasons. One, it's just bad policy. Shutting down the government hurts soldiers who have to work without pay. It hurts people trying to interact with the government. It hurts federal employees. It makes agencies' jobs more difficult. So it's just a bad policy. But more importantly for the Democrats, it's in the past been bad politics. We've had 3 major shutdowns in the modern era, and in each of those shutdowns, the party that's been trying to leverage the shutdown to get something has both not gotten what they wanted. In fact, they've gotten nothing, and they've been hurt politically by it, with worse standing in the public.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen that Republicans, of course, have historically, when we've had these shutdowns going back to the 95, 96 one with Newt Gingrich. And the one that I think I remember best, and a lot of listeners do, it was when the Affordable Care Act was about to go happen officially, and this is back in 2013, I believe it was, and that shut down for, 15, 18 days, and the Republicans definitely did not come out well, although you can argue, a year later in the congressional elections, people forget about this and they were successful. Now, you wrote, though, that the liberal, and this is a really interesting story, though, as we go forward, because there is no end to this right now, obviously. There's no apparent end. We see what's going on. We can talk about the specifics about this in terms of where the Democrats are coming from in terms of policy and why they're using this bit of leverage that they have here. You wrote that the liberal wing of the Democratic Party might be advocating a shutdown because it doesn't really want to go to the other plausible route to electoral success. And what is that other plausible route?
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, sort of, you can divide Democrats into sort of, largely speaking, liberal camp and a sort of a moderate centrist camp. And the liberals are very angry at Trump, both for actions he's taken. They think he's lawless, and for specific policies like Affordable Care Act and Medicaid and things like that. And a lot of the moderates in the Democratic Party take a different tack, right? They believe the way towards electoral success is by shedding some of their unpopular sort of liberal issues and tacking towards the center. A lot of the liberals don't want to go that direction. They don't want to sort of concede on things like transgender women in sports, or even more fundamental issues like guns. And those sorts of things are the kind of things the moderates see as ways to help candidates in sort of reddish or purple states win Senate seats, ultimately win the presidency back from the Republicans.
Again, we're speaking with Matt Glassman. Matt Glassman, he's a senior fellow at the Government Affairs Institute at Georgetown University, talking about the government shutdown now in its third day. The Senate is back today, and they're probably going to have another vote on this. We saw the other day when they had a vote, there were 3 Democrats who did vote with the Republicans on that to continue to get the government going back, vote on that continuing resolution, as they call it, to keep the government funded till November 20th. Let's talk about Russell Vought. He is, of course, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, the guy that many people say was one of the brains behind Project 2025. And people say this is a fantasy of his to get rid of government employees. And so this is another factor why some folks were very apprehensive about doing the shutdown, because we saw what happened earlier this year with Doge, with Elon Musk, with Russell Vought, in terms of firing federal employees. Now, we know that some employees, right now, they're not getting paid, and some may have to be, or maybe are being furloughed right now. But the big fear, I think, is a legitimate fear, of course, is that this will give the trigger to fire a lot of federal workers. Now, I know this goes both ways here, because let's talk about polls. What Elon Musk did with Doge back earlier this year was not popular, and again, they got away with a lot of it. And maybe some of those people are actually have been they went to court and they were able to keep their jobs until now, basically, right? I know that in some cases they were able to stick around, but ultimately, no, they're not going to be able to stick around. And so the Russell Vought factor, I guess the thing, let's go where we're at right now. Trump is talking about this. Russell Vought is talking about this. They haven't done it yet. We know there is political peril either way that happens. What do you make of what's going on with Russell Vought?
Yeah, well, I think the basic principle is that when you do have a shutdown, it does give the executive branch a fair amount of discretion over which services are essential and are allowed to continue under the law and which have to be furloughed. And we've seen this in past shutdowns. For instance, in 2013, when Obama really wanted to put the screws to the Republicans shutting down the government, he, closed the national parks immediately. In 2018, when Trump was sort of in favor of the shutdown, he was causing it, he kept some of those things open. Right now, you're seeing them sort of take this to the extreme, with Vought leading the charge. And I think it is dangerous for them, because whatever latitude they may have, you can see Republican senators getting jittery about them using them. Senator Kramer from North Dakota yesterday was quite upset, though, and saying, look, we have the moral high ground to get the government open here, but if you get in the way and start using this as an excuse for your sort of ideological projects and personnel, we're going to lose that with the public. And so you see sort of a division there strategically, but there's no doubt that Vought, and to perhaps a lesser degree Trump, see the shutdown as an opportunity to go ahead with some of the personnel moves that they had some difficulty executing earlier in the year.
And again, of course, the big issue, the policy issue, is that Democrats want extended subsidies for the Affordable Care Act, because those are going to expire on December 31st. They also want to reverse cuts to Medicaid that were contained in Trump's big, beautiful bill. That seems like that's not going to happen. But certainly this issue about the extended subsidies does have political resonance. And obviously Democrats are very aware of that. And that is maybe why, so far they're doing well in the PR wars. I want to tell you something here. Politico is reporting that Senate Majority Leader John Thune has said that he is willing to discuss the shape of future health negotiations if a, quote, critical mass of Democrats say they're willing to support a House-passed funding bill in return. We mentioned a moment ago, 3 Democrats joined the Republicans. They need to get, of course, 60 votes in the Senate to pass that bill. The story went on to say, this is, again, I'm reading from Politico this morning, that John Thune would not negotiate the substance of an extension while the government is closed. But when he was pressed on whether he was open to discussions with Democrats about how the health care negotiations might work post-shutdown, he said, yeah, we are open to that. And, of course, Democrats want a deal by November 1st. That's when open enrollment starts for plans offered on the Affordable Care Act exchanges. This continuing resolution, if they were to vote and pass it even today, is only lasting until November 21st. I guess the question is, this is, again, getting really heavy into the back and forth here, but it is what this shutdown is all about. What do you think? Do you think that, do you think that Republicans are sincere that Thune, they would discuss this? Like, Thune is basically saying, hey, let's just pass this thing right now, let's get this thing going, and then we'll be open to these discussions, because, in fact, maybe they are hearing from some of their own constituents about the ACA subsidies going away.
Absolutely. And I think this is sort of the classic way these shutdowns have always ended, which is the side that wants to reopen the government is not going to sort of allow hostage taking. They're not going to give you anything in writing now because that would just encourage more shutdowns. And so they'll say, look, reopen the government. We're not going to discuss that, but we are going to go with a good faith handshake that we will negotiate these issues, in the coming weeks. And I think Republicans have a lot of incentive to do that because their frontliners, their people on the edge really do want this. Their moderates in swing states and swing districts really do need to get an ACA extension deal. And so I think they are totally open to cutting that deal, but not until after Thune sort of proves himself to the base that he's willing to sort of stand up to the Democrats. And so I think you are likely to see that. I mean, I think people forget 2/3 of people who receive ACA health care are in red states. This is an issue that is very important to a lot of frontline Republicans, and I expect the deal ultimately to be cut. I do not expect the Republicans to put a deal in writing in order to reopen the government. I think they will stand firm in that we need votes. But sort of a handshake agreement that they will negotiate in good faith, I think absolutely that's where they're headed. And the flip side goes for Democrats here, right? One of the reasons I think Senator Schumer felt compelled to shut down the government is he was very nervous about his base getting mad at him. Right, and firing him. And so he's got to stand up and fight here, at least for a little while. And once he's proven to them they fight, in some ways everybody can win. Right? The liberals can get their fight they want to stand up to Trump. Schumer can get his coalition sort of unified behind him. The frontline Republicans can get those ACA extensions without sort of maddening the Republican base. And Trump can sort of get away scot-free without further tying of his hands and his sort of spending power grabs.
All right, we'll leave it there. Matt Glassman is a senior fellow at the Government Affairs Institute at Georgetown University. He joins us in Washington. Matt Glassman, thanks so much for joining us here on The Skinny on WMNF.
For having me.
All right. We're going to move on now. And that was interesting, Ray. I think. What do you think about this shutdown?
I mean, the shutdown is interesting. I mean, the biggest thing is, Republicans have all this control. So, just the average person on the outside, I don't know if they even recognize this. I don't know what the politics are like anymore out on the street in a lot of ways. You don't understand how people view things, and everybody's watching a lot of cable news, so you don't know what the truth is for them. So it's interesting to hear Dr. Glassman talk about that. I was looking at his 2019 essay in the Times. It says how Republicans erase Trumpism. And I know that's a lifetime ago,
right? It really is
in politics. But I wondered what his feelings, would be about Republicans and their ability to make policy now under this Trump too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we'll see what goes on here. But I think it's also true that when you go back and maybe look, I thought. It's weird because the Democrats are the party of the government, basically. They do believe in government as opposed to some Republicans who like to shrink it down to size. And so it is kind of adverse for them to be the ones. I saw Anna Paulina Luna put a video on Twitter yesterday where she talked about how WIC, the program to feed children and women, that's being stopped right now. That is a traditional liberal talking point. We're stopping feeding the kids. And now, Luna can say that. She can say that with authority, basically. That is actually
Luna's always been
now.
Unafraid to step out on behalf of women in that way.
That's true. That is true.
So especially with her, not be able to vote. I think
that's right. Voting, proxy voting,
voting. Yeah.
Hey, so all right. So very interesting. And now we can talk about this as we continue on here. But now joining us also via Zoom is Dave Ehrenberg. First, I want to make sure Dave is there. Good morning, Dave.
Hey, it's good to be with you.
Great to have you with us. Of course, this is Dave Ehrenberg, who was just recently stepped down earlier this year after a 12-year run as the state attorney for Palm Beach County, of course, the home of Mar-a-Lago. And before that, of course, he was a state lawmaker in Florida for many years, Democrat in South Florida area. I remember, Dave, you telling me you were Green Acres. Was that, that was one of your places in your district? I'm like, what? Green Acres, what is this place? And so Dave Ehrenberg also, he's also on MSNBC, News Nation. He's a big legal authority these days. And Dave is also the co-author of a book that came out earlier this summer, Fighting the Florida Shuffle, the inside story of corruption in the drug treatment industry and how one community found the solution. And let's start there because, Dave, and this is going to tie into former Florida Attorney General and now U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, because I know you have a relationship with her. And actually, you worked under Pam Bondi after you lost the primary to Dan Gelber in 2010. Pam Bondi was elected in the fall of 2010 as Florida Attorney General, which, of course, she stayed in for 8 years. And you worked with her on these issues about drugs and about the opioid issue. Tell us more about what you did with Attorney General Bondi at that time.
Yeah, and Mitch, thank you for reminding me of my loss in the Democratic primary to Dan Gelber.
Remember, I moderated a debate between the two of you. I don't know if you remember that. It was actually on my birthday in St. Petersburg in 2010. The LGBTQ caucus was having their weekend, convention, what have you. So long-time memories between you and me.
You know what? We go way back, and look, you learn more from your losses than your wins. And it actually it opened a door for me when I lost the primary, even though I then endorsed Dan Gelber against Pam Bondi. After the election, when she won, she then turned around and hired me as her drug czar because she saw that I was campaigning on the issue of shutting down the pill mills, which had become a national embarrassment, leading to so many unnecessary deaths in Florida. We were the pill supplier for the whole world. And she saw that, and to her credit, she reached across party lines and hired me as her drug czar. Took some heat from Republicans for doing so, but we worked together. We shut down the pill mills, and then a year and a half later, I ran for state attorney and got elected in Palm Beach County, and then served for the next 12 years. So, sometimes your losses will open up doors and maybe the best thing that happened to you, because if I had won that primary, I'm sure that I probably would not have been hired in that role afterwards, because when you run one-on-one against someone, you gotta go negative at times, and that could lead to hard feelings. What's interesting is after I had worked for her, she likes to say that first she beat me and then she hired me. But in reality, I didn't even make the playoffs. I lost in the primary, and things worked out the way they're supposed to work out.
So we'll talk about, we'll learn a little bit about your book, Fighting the Florida Shuffle. What is the Florida Shuffle? Let's talk about that. Begin there.
Sure. So after I was drug czar and we shut down the pill mills, the supply of these drugs, these opioids, went away, but the demand didn't go away. Already there were millions of Americans hooked on these drugs. So then people went to an alternative, the illegal alternative of heroin, and then it became heroin laced with fentanyl. So how do you get out of an opioid epidemic? Well, through drug rehab. But what if the drug rehab is the problem? What if the money that fuels drug rehab is the problem? What if federal laws that incentivize you to go to rehab have become exploited by bad actors to keep people in an unending series of relapses rather than recovery? That's the Florida Shuffle. It's the fraud and corruption within the drug treatment industry that keeps people through financial motivations in an unending series of relapses where the bad providers get paid more than the good providers. The good providers get hurt because they're not making the big windfall. There's no pot of gold at the end of the tunnel. But because of well-intended federal laws like the Affordable Care Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, there is an incentive, a perverse incentive for bad players in the drug treatment industry to just milk you for your proceeds, your insurance benefits, until you leave in an ambulance or a body bag.
Okay, and so obviously you saw a lot of that as a state attorney down there in Palm Beach County over the years. Is this still going on? Have we reformed this? What's happening now?
The book is also a book of hope. I show how Palm Beach County was able to fight the Florida Shuffle and win. Unfortunately, this problem will never go away until the federal government turns off the spigot. The federal government needs to tweak, not overturn, just tweak the Affordable Care Act and tweak the Americans with Disabilities Act and tweak HIPAA to empower parents, empower local governments to actually provide meaningful guidance and oversight over drug treatment and sober homes. And I detail it in the book. But it is a book of hope, as I mentioned, because we were able to help fix this problem in Palm Beach County. Now, Palm Beach County, which was ground zero for this problem, which was rock bottom, now has, I would say, the most ethical, successful drug treatment industry in the entire country. And I detail why that happened. And also, I provide a roadmap for other communities to follow Palm Beach County's lead. And also, in the book, we show the red flags so that families that are looking to send a loved one into rehab can see the red flags that are just popping up all over the place. What is a ethical provider? What is an unscrupulous one? How do you identify that? Because unfortunately, the federal government has not been much help in this area. So that's why we wrote the book. And I appreciate your bringing it up. It's called Fighting the Florida Shuffle. I wrote it with a co-author, Dr. Dave Campbell, who's also on Morning Joe, the chief medical correspondent. And we are very proud of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you're just joining us. We're talking to Dave Ehrenberg, former state attorney with Palm Beach County, now having his own private practice and still doing a lot of legal commentary on the networks, including MSNBC. Let's stay with, we mentioned Pam Bondi at the beginning of this issue here. So Pam Bondi, as we all know, everybody in America, she is now the U.S. Attorney General under President Donald J. Trump. And look, it's been controversial to say the least with some of the things that are happening. I guess the most latest thing one would say is now we've got this indictment against James Comey, the former FBI director. Let me ask you before we get into specifics about Comey, Pam Bondi herself, Attorney General, this happens with, other going back to RFK Sr., with JFK, his brother. I think the last Attorney General that I can remember that was really independent from the president who selected that person was Janet Reno, right? With Bill Clinton back in the 90s. They definitely clashed at times because she was seemingly more the U.S. Attorney General and not the general attorney for Bill Clinton. So, what can you tell us your thoughts about Pam Bondi, the job that she undertook? Because obviously it's a perilous position that went through several different people in the first administration with Trump, and what she's doing right now.
Well, I would actually push back on one thing. I would say that the last independent attorney general was Merrick Garland.
Okay, that's fair, yeah.
Who infuriated Joe Biden. I mean, here's an attorney general that slow-walked the investigation into Trump and then finally appointed a special prosecutor because he didn't want his hands on it. Also, who prosecuted the president's son. I mean, you tried doing that in this administration.
Yeah, okay, I take that back. You're absolutely right. Merrick Garland was very independent.
Yeah. So as far as Attorney General Bondi, when Trump ran for president the second time around, he made it clear that he wanted an attorney general like Roy Cohn. He wanted someone who would not be independent, who would be his own lawyer. That's how he interprets it, and that's why he appointed Matt Gaetz. So Matt Gaetz would have done Trump's bidding. He would have just blown the house down because Trump wanted someone who would go after his enemies regardless of the evidence, regardless of the law. But because the Matt Gaetz appointment fizzled, he then went to Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi, in contrast to Matt Gaetz, is an experienced career prosecutor who also served as attorney general. And I can tell you, when I served with her, she was not very partisan. And the fact that she hired me shows that. Now, this is a different Trump administration than the first one. He appoints people for loyalty. Pam Bondi is loyal to Donald Trump, and her loyalty is real. This is not the transactional loyalty you see from a lot of others who praise Trump in public and then under their breath curse him out. This is a true affection for President Trump. She and I disagree on a lot of issues. We always have. But I don't doubt her sincerity in that she believes in Trump. Now, she has not prosecuted Trump's enemies like he wanted to, which led to Trump calling her out on Truth Social, saying, you need to act now. Go after Letitia James. Go after Comey. And she's incurred the wrath of people on both sides of the aisle because of the decisions she's made and the decisions she hasn't made. But when it comes to prosecuting Comey, this, to me, came right from the White House. You saw it from the Truth Social posts. When the U.S. attorney, who Pam supported, Eric Siebert, refused to go along because there was a lack of evidence, Trump fired him and then appointed someone who is a loyalist, Lindsay Halligan, who has no prosecutorial experience. She's a lawyer in the insurance area. So she went into court for the first time without any career prosecutors with her and got the indictment. And reports say that this was done over the will of Pam Bondi and her number two, Todd Blanche. I don't know what to believe, but I do disagree with the Comey prosecution. It will backfire. They do not have the evidence, as far as we know, unless there's something they have that we don't.
Right.
They don't have the evidence to prosecute him for false statement. And if they did have something secretive, then you would think that the previous FBI directors who investigated this would have done something about it. You would have thought that Bill Barr, who is not independent from Trump until the very end, would have done something about this. He passed on a prosecution. You would think that John Durham, special prosecutor who looked into the origins of the Russia investigation, would have gone after Comey, Trump's enemy, for lying. He didn't. They all passed on this for a reason. The evidence is not there.
If you're just tuning in, it's 30 minutes past the hour. You're listening to The Skinny here on WMNF 88.5 FM. I'm Mitch Perry with Ray Roa. Our guest is Dave Ehrenberg, the former state attorney in Palm Beach County. I want to open up the phones here in a moment. The phone line you can call in right now is 813-239-9663. You can also send us an email at dj@wmnf.org. And let's see here. By the way, okay, I wanted to ask Dave this, and this is something that I just talked to my Ray off the air here. Dave, I want to get your thoughts about this. This is now being published right now. Prosecutors are convening a grand jury related to the Hope Florida scandal. This is something that actually I heard from somebody last night. I don't know if you've heard about this, but this is actually now happening here. I'm going to go link up to a story here. I think this may be the Times. Yeah, of course, the great team of the Times, Lawrence Maurer and Alexandria Glorioso, who are the ones who broke all the Hope Florida story. So let me just read a moment from a couple paragraphs of the story. So prosecutors in Tallahassee are convening a grand jury related to the Hope Florida scandal, the Times/Herald has learned. In recent weeks, the state attorney's office for the Second Judicial Circuit has issued subpoenas for witnesses to appear before a grand jury the week of October 13th. Two sources close to the matter told the Times-Herald. Who those witnesses are and who is the subject of the probe have not been disclosed, and State Attorney Jack Campbell declined to comment. Dave Ehrenberg, this is really interesting because, on very many levels, but also because it had been, the Times-Herald did report several months ago that Jack Campbell was, looking into this, and it was like one sentence, basically. That's all they knew, but that was happening. And you never know, and I'd love to know your thoughts about this when we hear about investigations or not, we don't hear about these investigations. Because sometimes, I know with the FBI back in the day, they would never tell you if they were doing an investigation, and so therefore, if they found there wasn't enough evidence there, they would not, pursue it, and that would be that. That changed when James Comey famously in 2016 announced that they were not going to prosecute Hillary Clinton. But the fact that they have a grand jury now assembled, there's that cliche about, and even going back to the Comey issue, right, where it took, I think the jury vote was 14-9 to actually get a count against James Comey. So, nothing is guaranteed here now, but learning what we just read to you right now, what do you think about what's going on in this investigation about Hope Florida?
I think it's serious, and it really impacts politically the future of the current Attorney General, James Uthmeier, who was all in this. Before he was Attorney General, he worked directly for Ron DeSantis and was the one involved with Hope Florida, and he has maintained there is no criminality here, no illegality, but he was pretty much in charge of this along with Casey DeSantis, and so this could reach into future politicians because Uthmeier's up for election as Attorney General. Casey DeSantis has been rumored to run for governor, so that's where this is a big deal. But also, as far as criminal charges, they'd have to show that they knowingly diverted taxpayer funds for a for-profit, it doesn't have to be for-profit, for a political ad, for a political motivation, where they took money that was given to the state from Centene because of overcharging Medicaid patients, and they diverted that to a PAC, a political action committee, a political committee, to run ads opposing the marijuana initiative or the abortion initiative that were on the ballots this last time. And that could be a crime. If you knowingly diverted taxpayer dollars for a private political agenda, yes, that could be a crime. Who knew about it and what did they know? That's where, when you're the Attorney General and you're running for election, this could be a cloud hanging over you through your election.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm thinking about this now politically because there's been rumors and I've heard different things that Donald Trump, who is, or maybe who Susie Wiles, his chief of staff, is very involved in Florida politics. And there had been a rumor, I've seen this, that House Speaker Daniel Perez, no friend of Ron DeSantis, was being talked about as maybe a potential attorney general candidate to run against James Othmeier. Then I heard recently that they were going to back away from that the Trump people actually like Othmeier. But this, whether it's Perez and whether it's got the backing of Trump or not, whether Trump would now endorse, again, very early on here, so let's not get carried away here. But nevertheless, this makes, you're right, Othmeier very vulnerable, like he always was, if you believe the reporting on this, which has been pretty, pretty basic, I think. I don't think it's been really controversial. Of course, we know the governor has basically called this political witch hunt, et cetera. Although, again, the bottom line is that they have never really produced enough information about how effective Hope Florida has been. He keeps on talking about it's saved taxpayers, what was it, $33 million, I think I've heard at one point. Anyway, so a lot to follow with that. And you're right, Dave Ehrenberg, politically, we'll see how this is going to play out. And Casey DeSantis, who the governor is not completely dismissed, apparently, or I should say Mrs. DeSantis hasn't dismissed about running because that's still kind of hanging out there. But my gosh, it looks tough against Byron Donalds, as the Republican nominee who has been endorsed by Donald Trump. Anyway, so that is something interesting. Staying back on Comey, or moving from Comey, we're also hearing reports, rumors about Christopher Wray. The Justice Department is conducting it. I'm trying to remember. I took this information down where I got this, but the Justice Department is conducting a national security investigation around the FBI leadership when Christopher Wray was the director. According to two people familiar, the Western District of Virginia is leading the inquiry related to alleged destruction or mishandling of documents connected with the Durham Special Counsel investigation. You just mentioned him. This investigation is looking at multiple potential subjects from the top leadership of the FBI from 2020 through 2024 at the time Wray was director. So I guess the point here, Dave Ehrenberg, is this idea of quote-unquote retribution, right, in terms of going after these people in the FBI that the Trump folks think were completely unfair to him when he was in office in 2016 through 2020 during the Russia investigation, all of that. It's a while ago. Donald Trump is whatever you want to say about what he's doing now. He's certainly just, doing things that we've never seen. The power of the presidency, how you could go as far as he is going right now. And yet he can't stop but look back and be angry about things that he thought was handled improperly when it comes to his political opponents. I guess we'll see what happens with Wray. We'll definitely be following with James Comey. But this path that he's doing on this, what do you think of that?
You got to be careful. There's something called vindictive prosecution. It is what it sounds like. And that's something that could lead a judge to throw out the case even before it hits a jury. I think that's what's going to happen in the case against James Comey. I think that President Trump's own words on his social media site, where he openly derides Comey and then instructs his attorney general to prosecute him, and then fires the U.S. attorney who says no, and then hires someone with no prosecutorial experience to do Trump's bidding. Yes, I think that will lead to the charges being thrown out against Comey for vindictive prosecution. And the same could happen when it comes to Christopher Wray. You just cannot go out there blatantly and openly and prosecute your enemies, especially when the evidence is really weak. Now, people may say, well, isn't that what Letitia James and Alvin Bragg did in New York against Trump? Well, it was a little different. First, Letitia James and, to a lesser extent, Alvin Bragg both campaigned on going after Donald Trump. That's a mistake. You should not do that, and it does open you up to selective prosecution and vindictive prosecution claims. But then the evidence is what the evidence is. When it comes to Comey, it's so weak. And if, for example, Letitia James ordered her prosecutors to go after, her lawyers to go after Trump, and if they rejected it, and then she fired them for that, and then hired someone from the outside who has never tried a case, and then ordered that person to try a case against Trump, that to me would be vindictive prosecution. That's not what happened in her case or Alvin Bragg's case. So the facts matter in each case.
Let's talk about. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Okay, real quick, Dave. You talk about vindictive prosecution, and I'm not trying to say that I don't have faith in the courts, but you talk about, a judge would throw that out. How much time do you think Trump needs to completely upend the judicial system at large?
Well, he can upend the prosecutorial system. DOJ can be just upended very quickly, and we're seeing that already. But when it comes to judges, it takes a lot more time. I mean, you have to get judges confirmed through the Senate, and just if you get one or two judges, it doesn't do it. In the first term, he appointed a lot of judges, but then he regretted it because he appointed judges on the Federalist Society list, and they were conservatives, but they were not Trump loyalists. So now he wants loyalists, which is why he appointed his own personal defense lawyer, Emile Beauvais, to a prestigious job on a appellate court. But doing that for one person and two or more here or there is not going to just totally destroy the judicial system. Right now, we're seeing the judicial system being a guardrail against unlimited presidential power, even as the legislative branch, Congress, refuses to act. They have emasculated themselves. So it's been up to the judiciary to at least give some semblance of a check and balance, and they're doing an okay job out of it. The U.S. Supreme Court has rolled over on a bunch of cases, but overall, I think the judiciary has at least stood up to make sure that our system somewhat works.
So we're talking about Trump here and what he's done with the judicial system, but let's go back to Ron DeSantis here, and then I do want to talk about politics more broadly. But Dave Ehrenberg, you knew Andrew Warren. I think you knew him anyway. He's still around. I shouldn't say like he's passed here. He's no longer the state attorney here in Hillsborough. Also, we have Monique Worrell, who's definitely still going on in Orange and Osceola counties. Dave Ehrenberg, what did you think when Ron DeSantis suspended Andrew Warren back, I guess it was in 2022? Then, of course, he did it a year later with Monique Worrell. That was something that people talk about. We've never seen anything with Donald Trump. Well, certainly in Florida, we had never seen what Ron DeSantis did in the respect of those two state attorneys.
Yes, I opposed when he suspended both Warren and Monique Worrell. I thought that was overreach by the governor. You're not supposed to be able to suspend people because you disagree with their politics. These are people who were elected by their communities, independently elected constitutional officers. And the governor disagreed with them, calling them reform prosecutors. And both those prosecutors did have tepid police support. And as a result, Governor DeSantis surrounded himself with police and said, we're suspending them. And then the courts upheld it generally, although it was a mix in the court. The one federal court opposed the action, and then time ran out, and then Andrew Warren was defeated in his attempt at re-election. So I disagree with that. I don't think the governor has the unilateral power to do that unless there is something more serious, like you commit a crime, public drunkenness. That's interesting. That's in the statute. But I remember when there was the predecessor to Monique Worrell, Aramis Ayala, in the Ninth Circuit, and she said that she will not prosecute anyone with the death penalty. She will not employ the death penalty on any case at any time while she's elected. She said that after she was elected. And
right. She said it afterwards, not beforehand. Remember, because Kamala Harris, by the way, mentioning her because I'm from San Francisco, when she was ran for DA, she announced that beforehand, so people knew that. I think that was a little controversial with Aramis Ayala because she said that after the fact. And go on, though, the story. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, that's exactly right. That was important. And so then the governor at the time, Rick Scott, did not remove her from office. That's the difference here. He did not remove her, but he removed the death penalty cases from her. And then Aramis Ayala took it to the Florida Supreme Court, which ruled against her and said that you do not have the discretion to ignore state law. But at the same time, it shows you how different things are now.
Yeah.
This is now neither Andrew Warren nor Monique Worrell had policies that were in derogation of state law, and they were both removed because the governor did not like that they were, in his eyes, soft on crime, and he didn't like some of his discretionary policies. Like he didn't want to prosecute cases where cops were getting people who were on bikes. And,
biking while black. Yeah, the whole issue. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Yeah, right. Again, you're just tuning in. It's 11:44 right now. You're listening to Skinny here on WMNF. I'm Mitch Perry with Ray Roa. We're speaking with Dave Ehrenberg, the former state attorney for Palm Beach County for 12 years, from 2012 to 2024. He does commentary right now. He's got his own law firm, his boutique law firm there in Palm Beach County. If you're a Morning Joe fan, you see him on there on occasion. Speaking of, Dave, why did you decide you want to just do a different part of your life now? I mean, you probably could have, I would think, run for re-election and won again in 2024. Why did you step down last year?
Well, I got remarried and wanted to start a family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, not to get too personal, but when you're in government for 25 years, I wanted to move into the suburbs and start a family and start a new chapter of my life, and that was the big reason. But also, I had been in government for 25 years.
Right.
I had been state attorney for 12 years, and I believe in self-imposed term limits. I believe that after a certain point, it's good to have a change. And I do think it's great to have new energy and new people who take over these roles. And I backed one of my top deputies, and she was able to win. So I'm excited that she's there at the office. And I started my own law firm, Dave Ehrenberg Law, and I'm doing more TV and streaming, and I'm really enjoying it. I wrote a book. So this is exactly where I wanted to be. I wanted to try something new, have new challenges, and I'm enjoying every bit of it.
Absolutely. And we're glad you're doing that and living your best life here. So let's talk politics. I think, you would consider yourself a moderate Democrat. So let's talk about, and of course, there's only a couple elections going on nationally right now, governor's races in New Jersey and in Virginia, but we do have this big New York City mayoral race, and it seems quite possible, if not probable, that 33-year-old Zoran Mondani, a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, will be the next mayor of New York City. And of course, this race has received an extraordinary amount of attention because not only is it New York City, but it's also, like I said, one of the few elections in the country. Mondani is very charismatic. He's received a lot of credit for focusing on the issue of affordability, an issue that Florida Democrats have tried to use unsuccessfully against Republicans for a number of years. He's also a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, which makes him controversial. I guess I want to get your thoughts about this. What do you think of the Mondani effect? Because I know that some moderate Democrats are worried about him winning because they think that he'll become the symbol of the Democrats nationally, and that will really hurt them in future elections. What's your thoughts there?
They should be worried. The Republicans are going to make him the titular head of the Democratic Party, and he's not a Democrat. He's a Democratic Socialist. He's an admitted socialist, and he has said things that I and others construe as anti-Semitic. I mean, when you cannot condemn the phrase globalize the Intifada, that to me is anti-Semitic, and because that is a phrase that's used to call for violence against Jews worldwide. And you can see the effect that how words matter by the senseless, brutal slaughter of two innocent Jewish people who were trying to worship on Yom Kippur yesterday in Manchester, England. That's what globalize the Intifada means. And his repeated, he's openly anti-Israel. His parents are openly anti-Israel. He's never had a real job. He was a rapper, a failed rapper, and he's been in government since then. So if that's who you want to run a huge multi-billion-dollar budget in New York, well, let's see. It's going to be an experiment. I don't think it will work. I think it will fail. And I think Democrats want to put forward people who can win elections, because if you cannot win elections, then you cannot govern. And now you end up with someone like Donald Trump. So when people say, well, he's going to win in New York, yeah, he can win in New York. And just like Bernie Sanders can win in Vermont. But ultimately, you have to make the decision as Democrats. Do you want to go the Mondani route, or do you want to win elections? And you're not going to be able to win national elections with him as your spokesperson, with him as what will be considered the leader of our party after he gets elected.
Well, this brings up a bigger issue to me, which is, and I'd love to get your thoughts about this, because we're less than a year away, almost a year from the election of last year, a big stumbler of an election for the Democrats, who not only, of course, could not win back or keep the White House with Kamala Harris losing to Donald Trump, but also, you lost the popular vote. It was demoralizing for Democrats. We all know that, right? We all know that Donald Trump is back in, and that supposedly wasn't supposed to happen. And the question is how, as you mentioned, Democrats winning national elections. I mean, we're not even talking about winning elections here in Florida, although, I'll ask you about that in a moment here, but national elections. And that is, and we know the way it's worked with the Electoral College. It doesn't really portend well after the next redistricting, the regular one in 2030, not the one that's going to be going on right now, in terms of, states like Florida and Texas getting more seats, which are very Republican states like California, New York losing states. So the Democrats, it does seem like they're going to have to sound more like Dave Ehrenberg. They're going to have to be more moderate in some of these issues. And I'm not sure that that's happening at ever well. And again, we have a lot of progressive Democrats on this radio show, and I love and respect them. I don't know in terms of, again, running, some of these issues. I mean, I look at immigration, right, which, is kind of, you could say out of control right now with what's happening with ICE. And yet it seems to me, obviously, that window was opened when what happened at the border the last 4 years, frankly, and the Democrats didn't seem to be paying much attention to that. And obviously, Americans were not happy with that. So what do you see overall? Forget about the Mandami thing in New York, but just overall, the anti-Trump fervor runs supreme in the party. They're going to have this, we're going to have these big Kings protests in a couple of weeks. They'll probably be bigger than ever than they were in June. They were huge. So that seems to animate the party more than anything else. But in terms of on certain positions, I don't know if there's been much change there. What do you think?
As far as change with
we'll say on issues like immigration. Let's just take that, for example.
Well, okay, on immigration, for example, that's the terrain Donald Trump wants to fight on. And we have to be careful on that. First, Democrats are in the right when it comes to that the public does not want the military in the streets. They don't want masked ICE agents taking away individuals who otherwise are law-abiding citizens for immigration lapses. They don't want people who have been here working for years, who have families here, just to be snatched from the streets and taken away. So if that is a legitimate argument, and that is something Democrats should lean into. But when it comes to overall, abolishing ICE and defunding ICE, that is not where the public is. The reason why Donald Trump got elected was he campaigned on closing the southern border, he campaigned on fighting inflation, and he campaigned on crime. Well, on two of the three, he's still above water. On inflation, he's not, because he overplayed what a president can do on inflation. But when it comes to crime and immigration, it's still his terrain. He wants to lure Democrats into that battle. And instead of saying, well, we do not want more law enforcement on our streets to battle crime, or that crime is not a problem, you can say, no, crime is an issue. And the answer is to fund the police, not defund the police, fund the police. And it's not to put military in our streets. And it's not to have masked ICE agents snatching people on our streets. That's un-American. But what is American is supporting police, law enforcement to actually enforce the laws and create safe streets. That's the argument Democrats need to make.
I wanted to ask you, we've got a couple of things kind of coming at me different ways here. Somebody says, as centrist apologists, Democrats are why the party's future slips away. Let's talk about Florida here for a moment, which, right now is becoming redder by the day. 1.3 million more registered Republicans than Democrats in the state. Have you been following David Jolly at all, his candidacy for governor?
Yeah, I love David Jolly. He's great. And to that last person who wrote in, that's great. You can say that you need to move further left. And the question is the reason why the Democrats lost in the last presidential election because we were not liberal enough? Is that the reason? That we were not far left enough? That we need to lean into the Bernie Sanders mold? Is that the answer to win national elections? That if you become more like Bernie Sanders and Mandami, all of a sudden you'll get all of these independents in Nebraska to turn and vote Democratic? That's written by someone who's never had to run for office. Because if you ever have to run for office, you know that most of America is within the 40-yard lines. And that's how you win elections. And if you don't appeal to those wide swaths of independents and soft Republicans, you are going to lose elections, especially in Florida. Is the reason why we keep losing as Democrats in Florida because we're not left enough? No, or we want to be more socialist. There's a reason why Republicans run on socialism, because it works. People don't want socialists. They don't want socialism. And so this is why you don't have to abandon your democratic values. There are Democrats who could get elected nationally. I mean, look, Bill Clinton was able to get elected president twice. Barack Obama twice. Barack Obama won Florida twice. Did he run as a Bernie Sanders? He did not. So there's a model, there's a roadmap to doing this. But if you just go ahead and throw your hands up and say, forget it, we're just going to blow up the whole system and we're going to run like Mandami's, yeah, you'll get a lot of energy from people like the person who wrote in, but you're going to lose elections.
And speaking of Mandami, Dave Ehrenberg, we have a caller, I think, who wants to talk about Mandami with you. Let's bring him up. Eric from Palm Harbor, you're on The Skinny.
Hey, good morning. I just wanted to clarify something about Mamdani. He's not anti-Israel, and he condemned the synagogue bombing or whatever happened yesterday completely. He's anti-genocide, not anti-Israel. And we all love the Israeli people, right now, we just aren't, just like we aren't happy with Trump, we aren't happy with Benjamin Netanyahu. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, Eric, thank you for the phone call. Any response, Dave?
Well, I also share concerns with Benjamin Netanyahu, and I wouldn't be voting for him there. But he is anti-Israel. Mondami is anti-Israel. He's even said it. He says he's part of an anti-Zionist movement. When you say you're an anti-Zionist, you're anti-Israel. I mean, there's no doubt he's anti-Israel. You can debate whether he's anti-Semitic. He's made anti-Semitic comments, but you can debate whether he's truly anti-Semitic. You cannot debate whether he's anti-Israel.
Let me ask you about Israel, because I know you're a big... I'm sorry.
Yes. Well, if I can also say this, and the fact that he keeps referring to Israel's military actions in Gaza as genocide shows you how ignorant he is, because by definition, the definition of genocide has never been met. There is no genocide. If Israel wanted to commit a genocide, it's the worst genocidal country in the history of the earth, because they have nuclear weapons, they have massive bombs, and the fact that they go door to door to try to limit the amount of civilian casualties, that proves that there is no genocide. The fact that Hamas puts civilians in harm's way proves there's no genocide, because if Israel wanted to kill civilians, they could. But instead, the civilians, which are put in harm's way by Hamas, are sadly casualties of war. This is a war that Israel did not start. The genocide was perpetuated on October 7th. That's an attempted genocide. So spare me your phraseology of calling it a genocide. It shows you have no idea what you're talking about.
Dave, I want to ask you, though, about the fact about Israel's stance in the United States here. It's not just with Democrats, right, who are down, as this war continues. And by the way, I just saw, I think, a news bulletin that Trump is giving Hamas till Sunday to make a decision on this latest offer. But this is a New York Times Siena University poll released this week, showed how things have changed over the past 2 years. You mentioned the Hamas attack from almost exactly 2 years ago. At that time, American voters broadly sympathized with Israelis over Palestinians, with 47% siding with Israel and just 20% with Palestinians. In the new poll, 34% said they sided with Israel and 35% with Palestinians. 31% said they were unsure or backed both equally. A majority of American voters now oppose sending additional economic and military aid to Israel. That is a stunning reversal from what happened 2 years ago. About 6 in 10 said that Israel should end its military campaign, even if the remaining Israeli hostages were not released or Hamas was not eliminated. And 40% of voters said Israel was intentionally killing civilians in Gaza. That's nearly double the number from 2 years ago. What are your thoughts when you see that poll, the results of that poll?
No, I mean, it's true that Americans, at least on the Democratic side, have turned against Israel, and that is a problem. And part of that is Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has not handled himself well through all this, and his policies have not been communicated well. And I do disagree on some of the policies. But as far as which side is right in this conflict, well, look, the fact that Hamas is about to reject this peace deal shows you, number one, they're the problem, and number two, that there is no genocide. Can you imagine if this were really a genocide, and yet the victims of the genocide, their government says, no, we don't want to end this conflict. No, we're not going to accept the peace deal. That shows you all you need to know. But yeah, Israel has a PR problem. They're going to have to deal with it. Netanyahu is not the best leader to be the person who represents the diversity of the state of Israel. They've lost the narrative. You have a lot of misinformation out there calling Israel apartheid when Arabs have equal rights to Jews, calling it colonial when Jews have been in Israel for thousands of years. I mean, there is the Bible. It's in there. And every Christmas, we'll celebrate Christmas, a Jewish boy being born in Bethlehem. But keep telling me how Jews just got to Israel in 1948. How Israel's all a white colonialist country when most of Israel is non-white. So, there's a lot of misinformation. A lot of it is perpetuated on TikTok, and it's something Israel's going to have to deal with. It is a reality. But I do think the war needs to wrap up. The problem is that Hamas will not surrender. They will not release the hostages. And until that happens, this war, unfortunately, is going to continue.
All right, Dave, we're going to have to leave it there. It's been great having you on this program. Dave Aronberg is the author of the new book, Fighting the Florida Shuffle, the inside story of corruption in the drug treatment industry and how one community found the solution. Dave, thanks so much for joining us here on The Skinny this morning.
Thank you, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll leave it there. Okay, wow, we got into the Middle East, which I don't usually like to get into in the show because...
Yeah, it went there. It's a hard one. And the Mondami thing, I enjoy that we talk about it every week. I mean, Democrats are going to have to reckon with what happens if and when he wins. The PACs against him are struggling to raise money. And what do Democrats do? I mean, locally, they've split, right? We have the Hillsborough Society.
Yeah. I mean,
now,
well, the issue of Israel, again, it's also split the Democrats really. Yeah, so Dave is a passionate supporter of Israel, and, I'm glad we got him on the program here. So, hey, we probably leave. We've got our fundraising next week, baby. And so I don't know what our goal is. But,
I want to keep doing this, Mitch.
Yeah.
I want Sean Canan to let me keep doing the show with you every Friday. So next week, please skip your a few $5 lattes or whatever you got to do to make sure you can pitch in next week. And for the entire station, the big push after the defunding from the state and the Trump administration was a huge boost for everybody here, and we're hoping to catch more of that energy and that spirit to keep this station on the air heading into half a century almost here serving the Tampa Bay area. On behalf of myself, Ray Roa, I want to thank you, my co-host Mitch Perry, Anthony Madura on the phones, Skip Sassy on the board for us today. The studio lights are about to go down in Studio 1. Joel and Shilkey is here with Art in your ear. Thank you so much for listening to WMNF Tampa.